Hi, folks. I'm Dan Dworkis, and this is the Emergency Mind Podcast, a space where we bring together lessons from the emergency department and beyond about performing at our best when it matters the most and applying knowledge under pressure. I'm so psyched for this conversation. I've been looking forward to this for a while. Our guest today is Paul Hughes. Paul is a former UK military special operator, a forensic expert, a polyglot and a polymath, and an overall, as he describes it, a disciple of elite performance. He's made incredible contributions to the allied military intelligence field, and then more recently has made a huge mark as a star speaker and a star presence on Hunted and Celebrity Hunted. So I met Paul at last year's TAC Trauma Conference, where I watched him do just honestly like an epic presentation about intelligence and operations mixed together. And then he had the extreme misfortune of being seated next to me at dinner, where we dug in and talked about life, the universe, and everything. Paul, thank you for coming on the podcast, man. It's awesome to have you.
Dan, it's great to see you, mate. It really is. Really is. Been looking forward to this one too.
Hell yeah. So let's dig in, man. So I guess let's start. And I don't know how much of this you can answer and how much we can't, but tell me about military intelligence from a special operations perspective, and what was your path in that? How did you get into it? Why that? And what's that life like? And we're going to drill down all sorts of ways from there.
Oh, crikey. I was quite late joining the military. I joined the Royal Air Force when I was 20. My education, certainly my secondary school education, so like equivalent of high school in the States, was really poor. I crashed and burned. I didn't realize at the time that I'm dyslexic, highly dyslexic, and I don't sit still very much. I'm always on the go. I'm always beavering away. So I've actually got attention deficit hyperactivity disorder as well. So if I was in school nowadays, I'd probably have what we call an SEN ticket, special educational needs teaching assistant. In primary school, I loved primary school. So your initial foray into school when you're like 4 years of age
Yeah.
through to age 10. And you can be what you want to be, can't you? And you can be very creative. And I was doing all sorts of weird and wacky things. I wanted to be an astronaut and had these great ideas of traveling and going to the world, even interplanetary and all. Because you're a kid and you can dream
Yeah.
big and really, you can really, your curiosity gets the better of you and you go for it. And then you get to secondary school. And I'm from a family of giants. Now, I'm 6'4". My dad makes me look like I'm something from Lilliput, and he's
Mm.
like an extra from Game of Thrones. So I grew and I was 6 foot by the age of 11, and I had size 12 feet. So I looked like Pingu. Okay, I could lean at 45 degrees into the wind and not fall over. I was a big gangly oaf, really. And I got bullied then in secondary school because of my size and because I was quite a placid guy. And long story short, I just fell victim to just not, it wasn't cool to be clever in my school. I was from a very industrial area of South Wales. It was pretty much just coal fields and steelworks and that sort of industrial sort of area. It wasn't particularly picturesque where I'm from, but there are certain areas of it. But ultimately, I wanted to travel, see the world, and I loved aircraft and fast jets and things like that. And of course, from my primary school days of wanting to become an astronaut, I thought Royal Air Force. Just aim for that. So after a few years of work after leaving school, not doing particularly well with my examinations, etc., I ended up going into the careers office for the military and ended up joining the Royal Air Force as an intelligence bod, basically. So I didn't realize I had a linguistic gift until
Mm.
somebody did a good job on me, really, and sold it really well. Yeah, that's how I got into the military. That's how I ended up going into languages and understanding that I had a language aptitude.
Yeah. And we were talking about before we turned the recording on thing here about some misconceptions of what learning language is really all about. And so can we press on that a little bit? Because I think we're going to be able to connect it to a lot of the stuff that emergency response teams have to do to be successful. It's going to be a bit of a weird arc, but I think we're going to make it happen. But what is actually learning a language?
This is it. I didn't find it particularly sexy when the careers guy was saying to me,
Sure.
"Do you like learning languages?" And I was like, "No, I didn't have a good experience in school with it because my French teacher was French and he just smelled the garlic and coffee all day and it just wasn't a good experience." And he found that funny. And I went, "No, it wasn't a joke. I'm serious. I really didn't like learning it. I didn't see the relevance. I didn't want to go to France on holidays and all this type of thing." And he went, "No," he said, "this is basically, you don't understand. When you're going in for this trade, it's within the intelligence sphere." He said, "You're basically a spy." And all of a sudden you're like, "Oh, hang on, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
This sounds a bit more Tom Clancy to me. Why didn't you say this in the first place?" And he explained, so I can't really tell you much about it. It's top secret, really. But we know that you go away and you learn a language, then you get, we call it applied training, apparently. So I think that's your spook craft you learn. And then your first posting will be Berlin. And you're like, okay. And okay, what's the pay like? Yeah, you're on top pay band. So all of a sudden, you've got my attention. I said, so how do I get into this? We got to send you away for a few days to a base in the Midlands, in the middle of the UK, a place called Rutland, and they test you to see if you've got a modern language aptitude. I went, okay, send me away. So off I went. Now, I didn't find language learning particularly hard in school. Just didn't see the point. It seemed like a lot of
Sure.
hard work learning words for very little return. And I thought, I know, if I want to go into the military, I just need my maths, my English, my physics, science-based type stuff. And I focused pretty much on them and got the okay kind of qualifications on that. So I got sent away, and then they put your headphones on, they play you these funny noises, and they say, listen out for this noise, listen out for that noise. They give you word searches like a Where's Wally type thing. So you've got to find different shapes and orientations and everything else, and you test your awareness of for patterns, basically, pattern tracking.
Mm.
And you do all this, and I scored really highly. And they went, you don't have the language qualification, but we think you've got a modern language aptitude. So we're going to offer you a position. So that's how it ended up. So I ended up being taken in. My first operational language was Russian. So I had to learn
Mm.
Russian for a year. And then you have about 7 months then afterwards where you learn your craft, basically. So you apply the language to the sort of fields that you're going to be operating in, as in the technical fields and everything else. So I use the unclassified analogy. If you're having your car repaired in a workshop and you listen to mechanics talking about different things such as pumps, exhaust pipes, turbos, etc., if you don't know what those specific components do, they're just words. So you're not interpreting the situation. So you need to understand the things that you're listening to. So you need to know what people reference to and how that fits in. And that brings into it what we call it SSA, which is a shared situational awareness. And you can then spot things that aren't routine. So you get your pattern of life. So when things start to sound different or something unusual is happening on a given day at a certain area, whatever, then that triggers alerts, and you realize that something's changing here, and you can build on that picture. So that's the sort of the unclassified sort of
Yeah.
analogy of what we were looking to do, really.
That's perfect. So one of the things that that we think about as we're training ER doctors is reading them in or indoctrinating them into that language of what matters to what, right? And some of it's actually words, like how do you say things, how do you describe things, but a lot of it is the unspoken language of the patient. How do they move? How do they breathe? How do they act? What normal is supposed to look like, and what you look for. How do you disentangle information from different machines and readouts and lab values and compile it into this understanding of what's happening? And when you're a junior, you are, like you're describing, that lost person in a mechanics shop where everybody else is talking words and they're seemingly passing useful information and you don't understand enough of the context of what's happening to it. So there's a pretty well trod and put together line of growth for I want to be an ER doctor. I train with ER doctors. They teach me what's important and I grow that. What's so fascinating to me about what you and I have been talking about is that there's a lateral aspect of that, right? It's like you have to learn your job you have to learn your trade craft, you have to learn your operations, you have to learn it in another language, and you have to learn to look for things that might not be obviously important, right? So there's like a lateral view to it. Maybe you know
Mm-hmm.
this, but now you're watching what's happening over here, and why is that happening, and what's that guy doing, and is that related to this thing? And then there's a layer on top of that when we're talking about shared situational awareness, where you somehow have to translate that to other people that have other skill sets without them knowing that language primarily. And that's such a rich analogy for me for emergency response teams because you have individuals that are hyper focused specialists in one field or another. They're the world's best heart lung bypass doctor, or they're an incredible pediatric nurse, or whatever. And they have to not only know the language of their craft and what's real and what isn't, what's normal and what isn't, but also how to talk to each other across languages. So,
Yeah.
how do you do that? How do you learn that? As you hear that, how do you start cracking at that problem?
No, I've had it because I've worked very closely within the Five Eyes community. So the Five Eyes community is after the Second World War, nobody really wanted to get caught again in that sort of entanglement. And so the Americans, Canadians, Australians, New Zealanders, and the Brits all got together. So the English speaking nations and said, we're going to divvy up the world into intelligence sort of sectors. We'll take this, you'll take that, and everything else. And then we'll all share this intelligence of what's going on. So I've worked alongside all those Five Eyes communities and others. And we're like a stick of rock. So we have a stick of candy in the UK called rock. We have it at Seaside, and you have a black pool written through it. So you crack it, and it. So no matter where you crack this rock, this big stick of candy, it has the place name in it. So I'm the same. So I've worked with all sorts of American forces guys, ranging from United States Air Force through to SEALs and stuff. But you crack the rock, and it's got military going through it, and our language is similar. We use similar kind of terminologies. There are slight differences. So what I tend to do when I'm working with Americans, the Americans go really fast, you're really quick at briefing, and you get through things quickly. But it's like, whoa, what was that? What was that? Say again. And I use the tell me situation. So it's talk me through this. Tell me what you're doing, and I don't mind telling people what I'm doing. So they'll do the same for me. So when we exchange, we have Americans with us or Australians. I do, right, okay. It's easy for me to do a narration. I'm doing it in my words. So I'm not having to think hard about it. I'm just saying I'm doing this, and you'll get it. You'll pick up the vernacular that you do, the vernacular that you actually I'm saying. You'll understand the terminology, albeit there might be some phrase differences and all the rest of it, but ultimately you get it. So it's that tell me thing and show me and describe me, and you just talk about it, and you basically you're saying things out loud. I'm doing this now because of that. I've noticed this, so my immediate thing is to check for that. This is happening right now.
Sure.
As my speaker just kinked out. Can you
No,
hear
you're
me?
great. Yeah,
Okay, cool. Just had a warning on my screen then. But it is that shared situational awareness, and it's that ability to learn quickly and not be embarrassed. So you get that in the special forces fraternities. I've been with Des Powell today, who was in tactical trauma with me,
absolutely.
and there's no, although there is a rank in the special forces squadrons as such, when things are going on and there's an operation, everybody has an equal voice. And it's the
Mm.
same in the Royal Air Force and the aircrew sort of fraternity. If I spot something on an aircraft as we're walking to the jet, and I'll say, hang on, why is that cowling dripping? Why is that doing this? Or hang on, I've got something wrong here. Why is that? You call it out. You don't ignore it. You question it. And there's no such thing as a stupid question. So you learn. People, that's how people learn. And it's not embarrassing. People aren't going to take the mickey out of you. They're not going to rib you for it, for asking that questions. But it's key to talk. And we do it on Hunted as well, because on the TV show, for those who don't know, Hunted is on a terrestrial channel in the UK, and it's grown up hide and seek. We have fugitives on the run, and we got to hunt and track them down. So we get intelligence, like they try and replicate what it is like an MI5 situation. So in like the CIA or FBI tracking people down, and then you have a ground hunt team, and then we drive around in big black 4x4s and helicopters and ribs and stuff, and then go and capture people. But I find that I'm paired up with former policemen and police women on that show. And of course, I'm military, and we have slight different SOPs, standard
Sure.
operating procedures. So again, I'm talking through it in the car. So we're learning. There's no such thing as a stupid question. And that's so
Yeah,
key in everything. And I think that translates across to the RS guys. When we were
absolutely.
on TAC trauma, that came across. We had so many similarities from Des Powell, from the SAS guys, through to the HeliMed people from Finland and things like that. We all had that stick of rock, that stick of candy again. It was all person, organization, fit.
Yeah.
We're there for that. And that's it. We've all got a similar core, a can do attitude, and a lifelong learning to a certain degree.
Yeah. And that to me, this thing, like one of the things that stands out, this idea of curiosity that you're describing, right? This endless curiosity about being like, hey, can you like why did you just do that? Talk me through what just happened over here so that I understand what you're supposed to be looking at. And I think one of the joys of getting to work with residents, or you all would call them registrars, right? So as they're
Yeah,
coming up through their training, is that you get to see what you do through a set of eyes that hasn't been indoctrinated with that yet.
yeah,
And you're like, why do I do it this way? I've always done it this way. I don't know. That's just the way that we do it. But now that you mention that, I don't know why we hold it like that and like why we make sense of the world this way. But I think that you're right that it takes this underlying curiosity about it in order to bring somebody into one of those operations and have them succeed at it. Because it's worth saying what you didn't answer that as, right? Like you could have answered that as well. In order to help them understand, I have to take them for 10 months and teach them Russian because that's not really an option most of the time. You really can't take anybody off, train them for that amount of time, and then put them back in. Like you can take some people, but you can't take everybody, right? In the same way that,
Mm-hmm.
like, to answer how to be a better member of a resuscitation team, you wouldn't say, take Dan and give him an extra 2 years of training in cardiology and then put him back into the trauma room and he'll get better. And yeah, I hope I'll get better. But in those 2 years, what else am I missing and what else is happening in there? So the answer can't be just dump everything. Instead, you have to train the person to be able to operate within a team of specialists. And you have to train the specialist to be able to translate to each other sort of what's important and what isn't in there. And more we're seeing, if I put on my mission critical hat for a minute, more and more we're seeing across military medicine, aerospace, fire, all of this stuff, moving away from a model of we are all a homogenous team of experts that have the same training going to do something. And more it's we're a team of diversely trained individuals with that same, what at BlackRock, am I saying that right? BlackRock core in the
Yeah,
middle of it,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
With that same core in the middle of how we approach the universe, but our trainings are very different, and somehow we need to figure out how to mesh on the fly and under pressure. How do you do that? And curiosity is, I think, one of the answers, right? I don't know. Can you point to anything else in either in your training or in your upbringing that you think made you successful at that, or paved the way, or something that you do now for it?
So I found funny when I first I joined an aircraft type, and it was a multi-crew environment. And in the middle of the aircraft, you had the officer brethren were the supervisors, and there was three seats, and they had the over-wing emergency exit. So if the aircraft was being downed or whatever, it was their job to learn and to do various things inside the cockpit. And but I said that's all well and good, but we should all learn how to do that. And
Mhm.
they went, that's their job. And I went, but what if we are spiraling? They get knocked unconscious. We've then got to work it out on the fly while pulling in a stupid amount of G
Mhm.
to try and open his window. We're then going to down, whether it be a hard landing or water, whatever. I said, we all need to know. Every other position on the back of that aircraft needs to know how that job is done. It
Sure.
shouldn't be just that. And fair enough, they listened. Other people have said that's a valid point, and so it's that's the thing. The environment, if you can then speak out and you're accepted, and it's not a case of you're thinking, "Hey, I've got an idea." You're coming out with mouth music for the sake of
Mhm.
it. You're actually coming up with something constructive, and people can work that out. And it's like timing your questions as well. If you're going through something in the ER and it's a critical time moment where you've really got to be steady and focused. You don't want somebody then or trying to explain things if you can't. You need to focus. There's a time and a place.
Sure.
And people, but then in our line of work, whether it be ER medicine to the police, to fire, to military, I think there's a lot of people that have that common sense,
Mhm.
as we say, to know when and not to say things. We're all, what I found in Sunspot when we're doing attack trauma, we had so many similarities and not a lot of differences,
For sure.
and it was like a family coming together, even though we hadn't met before, and then from all four corners of the world, which is
Mhm.
great to see, and it gives you hope in humanity. Then when you're seeing that the people that are at the front, the blue light brigade, who are dealing with emergencies and catastrophes on a routine basis, have the same heart and mind all over the world. So you could get the guys from Ukraine fitting in with guys in the fires in LA, right, that have been going on in the last month or so, to anybody from the Far East and Central Asia. It was all that common brethren thing, and it was the same thing, and everybody had that thirst for knowledge to learn more, to
Sure.
improve themselves. They had that professional development bug. I term it hyperplasticity. I don't know whether that's the right term, but it's like neuroplasticity on roids. You really, once you light that touch paper in your head and you realize that you're capable of learning and we've got one life, why waste it? Let's get on with it and it's not
Yeah.
nerdy, it's actually, it's thriving and it's addictive and it comes through to others. So that's what I found with myself now is that all of a sudden I'm getting asked to go and do talks and I'm dealing with elite athletes. So I'm dealing with Olympians through the Premiership footballers to international rugby teams to all sorts of people because they just want to hear me say about, are you doing the best for
Yeah.
you right now? What could you do better? Do you ever sit down at night? Do you journal things? Do you actually say, could I have done today better at the end of every day? Are you religious? Do you say your prayers or whatever? I don't care. All I care about is, are you improving day on day? To a certain
Yeah.
degree, it's like atomic habits, isn't it, really?
Hmm. Sure. Sure. And I think that highlights so many of these core traits, right? There's a sense of honesty about when I look at what that sort of shared cultural DNA of people in these spaces are, right? There's that sense of curiosity about what's going on around them, a sense of honesty about where they are, not blowing myself up to think I'm the best at everything, but instead being honest about, yeah, here's where I am. I want to be here. I want to be better than when I am. And a sense of drive, like I can go learn and change and get better at what I'm doing. And that's part of my job, right? Like a humility and a desire to improve as part of the sort of underlying substructure of who you are. And I totally agree with what you're saying. By the way, that time in Sundsvall was very inspiring for the future of humanity, right? The fact that there are people from all over the world getting together to want to get better at their work, to work together to solve hard problems and for the benefit of humanity. That's at least on the American side of the pond, that's lost in the news these days often. So it's worth repeating that out loud that there are a lot of smart, talented, driven men and women out there who are getting after it to get stuff done.
No, it was awe-inspiring. It really was. And because we came over, and of course, we kicked it off with the keynote and everything else.
Mhm.
And we didn't really know that we were meant that we could stay and listen to the other talks. And because Des and we were thinking, oh, we can just go down to the town and we'll have a look around. We never went to see the town. We were that. So for the whole duration of the several days we were there, we just listened to everybody and saw all the guys in the exhibit, guys and girls in the exhibition as well. And it was just like, this is amazing. This is absolutely amazing. So we come back so genned up
Mhm.
on the new breakthroughs in medicine and everything else, but also different ways of doing things. And it's like the way that you approach situations from an ER perspective, how we got takeaways from that.
Sure.
So
Sure.
we can apply it in our jobs and vice versa. And it was just a delight, an absolute
Yeah.
delight.
Yeah. So cool. Thank you to Frederick if you're listening to this.
Oh yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
I want to roll us back to this problem of shared situational awareness and press on that a little more. So, when you look at that now, and this can either be through Hunted or through anything else that you're doing, and you're developing shared situational awareness of a problem with your team, what do you do differently now to build that than you might have done when you started?
I think when I started, I think I'll be honest with you. I think it was knowledge is power when I first started.
Mm,
Coming out of the military, and I was setting myself as a limited company incorporation, and I wanted to make inroads into sort of earning money and creating a business which lasts 13, 14 years on. It has, thank goodness. But I was quite sheltered. I knew that I was capable of what I was doing on the forensic side of things, on the consultancy side of things, and everything else. But it was a kind of knowledge is power, and it wasn't good, and it wasn't good for me. And I think knowledge needs to be given. And I heard a good analogy the other day is that a candle doesn't lose any power by lighting another candle,
sure.
and we're all different. And I've shared ideas and things with other people who are ultimately competing with me in the
Mm,
forensic space and other things, and then the corporate speaking side of things as well. But I'm me. There's only one of me, and I'm doing okay for myself. And when I started sharing that knowledge, and of course, I
mm,
got people who work with me as well, and all of a sudden, when I started opening up, then the magic started to really happen. So so don't keep things in,
sure.
and don't stop being so prissy. And I didn't intend to be. I just thought I need to be like this. I need to be quite. This is my baby. This is my business. This is the way I do things. I'm going to be quite secretive. But of course, you don't put things out there. Then people don't get to see the real you. When people start to see the real you, and you're spreading the word, all of a sudden opportunities start to arise, and you end up going far flung places, and you end up doing amazing things, and you get repeats to go back and talk to people. Does it whether it be the TV stuff? My forensic stuff's just gone through the roof, and it's just me going into court and being honest and giving the forensic evidence. And I had a funny issue in a sheriff court in Scotland a couple of weeks ago, and I had a barrister questioning me because I have a bit of an orthodox route to my forensic specialty. A lot of the people doing my evidence are from the police, obviously, they're sort
Sure.
of forensic specialists, scenes of crime, that type of thing. And all of a sudden, they've got a former spook in front of them. So my CV looks completely different. So they go, "What the hell is going on here?" So they'll question things, and they'll see I speak several languages. And I had this one barrister say to me, "But aren't you just a linguist?" Oh, It was like the firework display in my eyes, I think, gave it away. He even took,
Mhm.
albeit it was, he took a step back. Not that I was going to get sort of fisticuffs or anything like that,
Sure.
but it was, you could obviously see that it really lit a touch paper within me.
Yeah.
And I again, I then gave him a brief lesson on neuroplasticity, white matter in the brain, and the fact that languages actually create myelination, which sends messages around the brain, different spheres, at 100 times quicker than just grey matter trying to do it themselves without the sort of the myelination process, which is what it is. And so all of a sudden, I said, I had an epiphany moment from learning languages, which then made me realize that I can learn other things a lot faster than people who are monolingual.
Sure.
But the sheriff was there with a smile on his face, going, "Yeah, he deserved that. You go for it, son." That was quite good. I enjoyed that.
That's hilarious. Yeah, that idea that and I forget what exactly this quote, but it's something like for every language you learn, you're a different human being,
Oh yeah,
right?
without
And
a
that you
doubt.
have a different point of view on it. And it strikes me that your story about the mechanics earlier really hit me, right? It's not just a language in the sense of French or Russian or whatever it is, but it's also like a cultural immersion in a concept, in a sphere, in sort of a background, right? Mechanics speak a different language than cyclists speak or than athletes speak in some way, shape, and form. And
Mm-hmm.
honestly, I don't know enough about mechanics to tell you if airplane mechanics are a different dialect than car mechanics or if it's a totally different language, right? There are days in the hospital when it feels like different tribes of doctors speak a very different language, and it gets in our way of actually operating as a team. And there are some days when it feels like, oh, we're speaking dialects, and okay, I don't really understand what you're saying about this new treatment, but I understand enough about what we're doing that this is what I should care about. And there are other
Yeah.
times when it's, I don't know what you're saying. And I understand the concepts of how the human body works. We're from the same root language, but I don't know why you're doing what you're doing. And it's easy to assume that what you're doing is wrong, as opposed to ask the questions about, like, why are you shaping it this way? Yeah. So,
No, no,
oh, please go ahead.
no. It is, and it's again, it goes back to tell me, and it's getting that question across. So if I've got some guys that work with me at the moment who are a different generation. I've got Gen Zs, so I've got those guys working, and they're from a digital perspective all over it, and they're great from getting the message out there. From their tech awareness, etc., is really on point. Their attention to detail. Sometimes
Sure.
they don't ponder that extra second or two. They're a little bit too quick, and they're a little bit too flash, and they
Mhm.
just need to just ponder. Just take a few seconds just to let that think in before sending an email, before just
Yeah,
calm down. Don't get heated. Don't take the bait in court if you're giving evidence. Take your time. Don't like in that situation when that
sure.
barrister was questioning me. It'd be quite easy to be insulting and back, but just think he's just doing his job. He's doing the death by a thousand cuts routine, so he's trying to get a reaction from me type thing. So when you come back, take it, show the disdain in your eyes, but then come back with some wit, etc., etc. So I'm teaching youngsters at the moment to just take a little extra few seconds. That's all it takes. Get a different part of your brain to engage rather than just this sort of Neanderthal response that you're going to come out with, which is just your emotion. So just let your prefrontal cortex kick in a little bit first and then come back with an answer. That's it. But again, if they're using words that street, shall we say,
Sure.
then I call them
Yeah.
out on that straight away. Say, if you can't use it in a report, in a court of law, don't use that when describing things. Use better sort of way of expressing yourself, because it's not going to help you. If you put street words in a court of law, you're not going to get much work, and you're going to get torn down. Think about it.
That's good advice. That is. Let me shift gears a little bit. So we're talking about building shared situational awareness. One of the things that ER doctors have to do sometimes is you might train in one facility with one culture and one team, and then you're called upon to go out to some outlying hospital in a different area and drop in and be the ER doctor in that space. So you still know the techniques, you know the medicine, but you're off on your own now. And it's a brand new team of people. They have their culture, they have their ways of doing it. And you're dropping in as an expert. And by some metrics, you're the leader of the team because you're the doctor. But by other
Yeah.
metrics, you're the guest. And it strikes me that situation probably is fairly similar to places that you've been in your career, right? Coming in as a specialist into an area where you're a guest and a specialist at the same time. How do you navigate that? And how do you navigate that knowing what you do now about the depth of culture and shared awareness?
Oh yeah, I've had that many times when you surge in. I had that with United Nations when I was a weapons inspector with United Nations Special Commissions. One of my first forays into that, we meet up in Manama in Bahrain, and again, we're from many different countries, and with all them, we're all experts in our own right. But then you get into a bit of a you get some that are quite testosterone fuel type people then, and you get others. So we had a array of different backgrounds, and you've just got to go out and enjoy yourself with them. So there's quite reclusive people. There are people who don't go out. I'm not saying go out and get drunk and all the rest of it, but just go out, have fun, go out and do something, and just be yourself. And I'm quite a talkative person, and I've done quite a few things in my time. And so I bring out a few of the old party stories, so to speak, and just say, look, this is my background, this is what I've been and done, and all this type of stuff. Can you give me a quick elevator pitch? And that's what I did. So
Mm,
all of a sudden, I had guys from Australia that were a lot more senior to me who have done amazing things. We had people who are senior government people from New Zealand. We had amazing veterinary surgeons from
mm,
other parts of the world because their awareness of bioweapons was second
sure.
to none. So they're all different backgrounds. I said, just give us some pointers. So where you're from, how'd you like to be spoken to? So, what's your name? So your name's James. Do I like to be called Jim? I like to be called James. Fine, that's fine by me, James. You're a big James to me now, and all
Yeah,
you break it down. I try and probe them then to see if they got a sense of
mm,
humor because they're going to need it in a theater like Iraq.
sure.
You're going to need, and for some of them, it was their first time into the Middle East. So all of a sudden, I had a big Norwegian guy on my team who had a really dry sense of humor. Spoke good English, as most Scandinavians do, but he hadn't been to such a hot climate before. And we were there in the summer. So we're
Mm,
talking 45 to 50 degrees. And some of these guys were highly qualified, but they're dehydrating like crazy.
sure.
So it's just, I'm doing the basic survival things with these guys and girls and just saying, look, keep your water bottle topped up at all time. Make sure you got spares in the back of the car. If we break down, then you're going to need to have that. Don't worry so much about the food side of things. Do you have spare batteries? Do you got your first aid kit? Do you know what's in your first aid kit? So if somebody goes down, oh, it's a first aid kit. Have you checked it? Have a look
Yeah.
what's in it. So all of a sudden they're seeing the common sense approach from a military perspective, then going, these are the things that are going to keep you alive and going to prevent any sort of mishaps growing or small mishaps growing into a catastrophe in short time space.
Mhm.
So all of a sudden they realize the value of what I'm bringing to it. Then I'm bringing the glue. And also because I'm a Welshman, but
Mm,
I'm British, so my English is pretty good for report writing. I said, look, from a report writing perspective, I'm your man. So if you got anything with your reports, you're thinking it's a bit, let me phrase it for you, and I'll help you along that kind of line as well. So it's just breaking down those barriers and again showing the real you really, in that we're all there on the same team. So we had a complete eclectic mix. We had French, Ukrainians, we had Swiss, Norwegians, South Americans, Mexican, North Americans, Canadians, a real mix. And of course, by the very culture, there's some sort of people then who are wary of others. And you've got to try and break that down then. Look, we're United Nations here.
sure.
We're looking, our raison d'etre here is weapons of mass destruction. We're looking for evidence of weapons of mass destruction. We couldn't care less about anything else. We're just here with this mandate from the UN, and this is what we're here to do. And we'll go and search, we'll write the reports, I'll oversee the proofwriting for it, and I'll make sure you don't die of dehydration in the meantime. So it's that type of thing, really.
Yeah, amazing, man. You just threw it out so casually in there. You said, "Yeah, what am I going to do? I'm going to bring the glue. I'm going to bring the glue to this team." And man, Paul, that is such a superpower, right? What an incredible superpower to bring the glue to the team like that. I'm so fascinated by that because I've watched teams live or die based on whether or not there's somebody who has that superpower of bringing the glue to it. And I've tried to be a person who does that through the arc of my career, succeeded sometimes and failed others. But that idea of how do you bring the glue, man, that's press on that. Like, how did you learn that? What do you do with it? How do you teach that?
I think I've learned from my own mistakes, really. Like I'm going back to the school side of things, right? So
Hmm.
in school, I was big, tall, gangly thing, had the worst acne on the planet. It was hard trying to find a girlfriend and all the rest of it. They'd run a mile because I had a pizza face. If I smiled, it would erupt. I'd cover them in pus, for God's sake. It wouldn't be a pretty scene. But ultimately, when I finally grew into my body and I failed the higher exams you get before going to university in the UK, they're called A levels.
Hmm.
And they're a step up from the basic ones that you do when you're 15, 16. And you specialize down. And I failed mine
Mm.
catastrophically. I didn't apply myself. I just applied the same level of effort as I did for the lesser exams. And you need to apply yourself a damn sight more. And I didn't. And I crashed and burned. And so, therefore, I ended up selling suits in a fashion retail
Huh.
outlet in Cardiff. So, Cardiff's capital city of Wales. It's quite metropolitan and I loved it. I really enjoyed it. So I'm a Rhondda Valley boy. So I'm from the coal mining area, and all of a sudden I was working in Cardiff, this metropolitan thing. It was like, wow, tall buildings, a multicultural environment, and I'm working with people from different backgrounds. I've got people who are in the shop who come from Somalia because Cardiff is a port town, and then all of a sudden I'm working with guys who are gay, and I'm thinking, oh my god, hellfire. It
Yeah,
was awakening for me and I
sure.
loved it. I really embraced it. But it taught me that I had, as my dad terms it, the gift of the gab.
Mm.
Because when I finally came out of my shell and I started living and being me, I realized that I could break down barriers and I could talk to people and people liked me. And therefore, I was a really good salesman. So, of course, we'd have people coming in at that time in the late 80s. Miami Vice was still cool on TV, Dom Johnson, yeah, and all that type of stuff. And I was selling suits. So we'd have coal miners coming in or steel workers coming into the shop who people only need a suit then for a few things.
Sure.
A wedding, going to court, or a funeral. Okay, or a job interview, maybe. Okay, so there's only really four things that people want a suit for. Or because Miami Vice, people were doing it then to go
Right.
out clubbing on the weekends type thing and to attract a suitable partner, so to speak. So we'd have these big burly miners or steel workers coming in, and I'd be there and I'd be joking with them. And I'd have them looking at themselves in the mirror and thinking things differently. And I didn't realize it, but one of the guys that I was working with, who was my manager, said, "You're doing a Jedi mind trick on these guys." And I'm not a big Star Warsy type person. And I thought, I've seen the first Star Wars movie, but what do you mean by that? He said, "You're tricking him into think they look like Dom Johnson." I said, "These guys have a beer belly and dodgy tattoos in places where they shouldn't have tattoos and that type of thing." He said, "But they walk out of this shop buzzing. You can see they bought their suit. They think they are the best looking thing in Cardiff when they go out on a Saturday night." And I thought, okay, I'm not deluding them. I'm literally
Sure.
saying, mate, that I would do it this way. I would do it that way. If they then look in the mirror and see something that they want to see, then that's brilliant for them. I don't do anything different now, even when I'm doing things with athletes. But yes, I've got a master's now in cognitive engineering on brain power and all this type of stuff. I know the science behind it, but ultimately, I'm the guinea pig. It's been me all the way along. So I can put the science, I know all the science bump behind it, but I can put it in layman's terms and I'll explain it from my perspective of how I've failed at things, how I applied myself, how I've learned languages, how I've got the white matter to grow in my head, which all of a sudden, when this super fast broadband is in your head, you can use that super fast broadband for everything else. It's not
Yeah.
just for the languages, it lightens up every other part of sphere of your brain. And you get the dopamine hit then from learning new stuff and thinking, I get that. I get that. I want more. I want more. So learning is the drug. So my
Yeah.
drug of choice, books, journals, and things like that, and passing that baton on. I'm currently mentoring a guy called Liam Byrne. He's the British wingsuit champion, and he's going for this year now. He's currently training in Patagonia, and we're going to be in North America later on this year. We're going for the World Halo wingsuit record.
Nice.
All right, so we're
And
talking
sorry,
25,000 feet
wingsuit. This is you look like a
wingsuit, like a
squirrel and you're
flying
flying around it.
squirrel.
Yeah, amazing. Okay,
Yeah.
awesome.
So all of a sudden, I'm mentoring him.
Wild.
So he's an extreme athlete, but
Yeah.
I'm just dropping in little nuggets here and there just to think differently. I don't need to. He's a talented, amazing guy, but I'm doing that with different athletes now across the board, and it's just me and telling them about my big pingu feet when I was in school and the problems that I've had and how I've overcome them and how the science then knits in and that it's all about these small percentages every day and critiquing yourself. Have I done the best day today? I've done a pretty good day today. Yeah, you've got to learn as well to take it easy every now and again. It's very
Mhm.
easy from our environments to be full throttle
For
all the
sure.
time. And you've got to flex that in. And in my forensic work now, I'm booking into October, November time for court appearances to give
Mhm.
evidence. And they come back, are you saying that you're fully booked until then? I said, yes, I am for court because I don't want to do any more than 2 a week because I need other time to
Sure.
do other work and my other interests. But I also need a day a week other than a weekend where I can do other things. So today is my other things. And when
Yeah.
I do my other things day, that's when the creative stuff happens. That's when the magic starts to happen. That's when I start thinking, boom, you get a brainwave.
Yeah.
And I'll listen to podcasts or I'll read something different. I'll break my routine. I'll do something wacky on this given day. And that's where the neuroplasticity kicks in. And when you do something wacky and something different it's a cheat day for my brain. That's what it is. And my
Yeah.
brain goes, thank you. And all of a sudden, all these ideas start coming into my head. And I'm writing these things and write them down. Write them down. Don't put them on your phone on notes, because everybody puts things on notes and everything else. Physically write them down because your hippocampus is the ringmaster for your brain. And when you physically write something down or you physically journal something in a diary, you start believing that a hell of a lot more. You're making that a contract with yourself. You are writing that down and you'll remember it more than just typing it onto your notepad on an iPhone. It
Yeah.
works.
Man, Paul, thank you for taking time away from your crazy day to come talk to me about this. Has been epic, and I feel like we barely scratched the surface of like half of this. And if you're listening to this, if you ever have a chance to be lucky enough to be in a room with Paul and hear some of his stories that we're not talking about on this, that we can't say over the air, they're pretty epic, and it just, man, so cool. I really appreciate it. I want to give you a chance at the end of this to issue a challenge to people listening to this and to give folks a thing to take away that you want them to try or explore. And while you're thinking about that, I'm gonna fill the air for you to think for a second and give our normal disclaimer, which is that our job here on the Emergency Mind podcast is to figure out the best of what other folks already know about applying knowledge under pressure as an individual, a team, and an organization. We don't provide medical advice. We certainly did not provide any medical advice today, which is wonderful. And we represent only ourselves on this, not any of the organizations that we work with. So, that disclaimer aside, Paul, what do you want to challenge folks with?
I'm going to challenge people. What have you always wanted to do as a hobby or an interest? Okay, so from my perspective, I got a dad who bought a ukulele and it's been in the cupboard for the last few years or so. So there's no excuses. So on your cheat day or cheat hour, whatever it may be, I have a cheat day. I'm lucky enough to factor that in. So it gives me that bit of breathing space in my noggin here, in my skull. But give yourself some time. Get up an extra hour early and do that one thing, whether it be learning a language on Duolingo or something. You want to learn Spanish, you want to learn Mandarin, you want to learn Arabic. Do it. If you look how much time and you have your screen time on your phone, you realize you spent 3 to 4 hours a day on your phone. You're thinking, what the hell what's a deliverable I got from that? What have I learned from that today? How can I get that figured down and get straight to the main crux of the matter? So if you can get 1 hour is what, 4% of your day? If you can't get that and do something different, the white matter lighting up of your brain until you experience the epiphany, the cognitive epiphany of getting that white matter functioning, that super fast broadband in your head. You're going to get it from learning another language, even to colloquial levels, or learning an instrument comes as a close second. Learn that instrument, learn that language, improve yourself instead of watching cat videos on YouTube, okay? Because you will thank me for it. Time invested in yourself, even if it's just 1 hour a week, is time invested in you. You deserve it.
Oh, yeah, man. Paul, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It is truly an honor.
Mate, it's my pleasure, Dan, anytime.